PXN Gaming. What's up, man?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm swell. Ready to duke it out, man.
All right, I'm ready. Let me get my boxing gloves on. Yep, we're good.
All right. So, normally I like to start out with niceties, but not this time. PXN Gaming, though you are my friend, we are about to go gloves off. We are debating the Nintendo Switch console collectability. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, I would like to say that uh, what you are going to hear, the debate, is basically me predicting that the Switch will be the most collectible console. So I'm ready. I have my gloves on. I've been working out, so let's hope that I can last more than 5 minutes.
I'm gonna avoid any jokes. All right. So my
Thank you.
statement, yeah, sure. My statement is that I think collectability is complex, especially when you think about consoles, and that it's too early to predict with regards to the Switch. Although there may be some factors that may lead you to believe that it would be a successful console and that may be collectible. You may have the right idea, but collectability maybe is not the concept that I think that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so. Just so first off, one of the things that I really like about this is the fact that it's a very subjective topic, right? Not only is it subjective, but it also depends on your point of view, what your point of view of collectability is. For example, I was having a conversation with Terry, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later on, but based on our discussions, I think, not to speak for on behalf of Terry or anything, but I think what we were talking about when it comes to collectivity were two completely different things. So I think we're gonna kind of dive into that as well.
Yeah, that's actually kind of how I wanted to open as well. I should say that the point of this video for the viewers is this is kind of a response on my end with you. We can kind of, pool our opinions together. It's not necessarily, my goal is not like to change your mind or even to like, I don't know, necessarily have my mind changed, but just to have a conversation about it and just to respect each other's opinions. And maybe I'll challenge you, maybe you'll challenge me. That's, all fair game.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I mean, there is no such thing as me being right or not being right because, like I said, it's subjective. It's not even happened yet.
Right,
So who knows what the future holds?
right. So let's talk about collectability in general. Before we get to the video game aspect, what do you think makes something collectible?
Two things for me, and I may be forgetting some, but the two main factors for me are availability. Yeah, I mean, if it's not available, I don't care how collectible it is. Now, for some people, they will say, well, that's their holy grail. That's what they thrive off of. But I'm talking the big picture. If people want to collect something, it has to be available. Somewhat readily available through multiple means, preferably, but if not, at least one source or whatever the case is. And second, obviously, the most important factor I think is desirability. If there is no desire in the, I mean, I'm going to speak for the video game market. If there's no desire well, amongst video gamers to collect for a certain system, no matter how available or how collectible, quote unquote, it is, they're not going to do it because it's not really desirable.
When I hear desirability, I think of like the appeal. I think they're synonymous in a sense. Like, what is the appeal of getting like a Sega Saturn nowadays? I mean, because like, or even retro consoles. Because I mean, in some respects, I can understand that emulating something like the Wii is going to be a pain in the ass. And I imagine that like Switch, emulating that like maybe on a Steam Deck or something, I don't know. I can't predict those things. But I know that when it comes to the older games and older consoles, a lot of that stuff is emulatable, experienceable, even in the new era. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of like games that never came out overseas. And so it's like there is some desirability in that aspect. It's almost like access. Like I guess you were talking about availability. I just question when it comes to access. So I guess when you say like the Switch is going to be the most collectible or most desirable collectible console, I guess like the question in my head is like, well, aren't there like tons of Switches? Isn't it like one of the most accessible consoles?
And yes, absolutely, and that's my argument towards its longevity because it is a popular system. See, what people tend so when I have these collectability debates, a lot of people tend to say that the PlayStation 2 is very non quote unquote collectible and the GameCube is super collectible. Well, that's what they're looking at on YouTube, but I see tons upon tons of people that are collecting for the PlayStation 2, and the reason why they are is because you can get so the the price of entry is not that high. You can have somebody that's, hey, you know what, I want to try to collect something, a system that is not super crazy to collect for, not hard on the bank. You can build a decent collection, has a great library of games. You can start off slow, but also on the other end of the spectrum, it has some major heavy hitters that are very very quote unquote rare, and I guess the word I'm going to throw in there is collectible. So there's that wide spectrum. So and to a certain extent there is on the GameCube as well, but I think the GameCube sort of is getting a little bit more pricier for many people, especially if you want to go for the Nintendo published games, or if you want to look at those in detail. So that's what I mean. As far as collectability, not something that is rare, not something that is like, oh my god, I gotta have it in my collection, but something that is, hey, I can do it, you can do it, my neighbor can do it, and if we really want to go a step further, we can go after the big heavy hitters when the time comes.
So it's almost like you're able to collect for the console and that it's like fun. Like you can go out and you can get PS2 games or you can get Switch games. I guess I start to see when it comes to the Switch issue an issue in terms of, like you said, the GameCube is getting expensive. I feel like Switch games have always been expensive. I don't, I think when I thought of the 3DS, it was actually really fun to collect for because you wouldn't see a game that was marketed over $50 and on average it was 40, but they're all 60. And I guess you could say, oh, PS5, you get some that are 70, etc. But I think it works in hindsight to the idea of like the type of games that the Switch is producing. Like, I don't see why I'd want to pay $40 to play Steam World Heist collection on the Switch when I could pay 10 for the PS4 version.
Yeah, I mean that's true. That's a valid point. But my counter argument to that is, if you want to play Mario Odyssey, unless you go the emulation route, you're gonna have to pay the $40 for the Switch. And Nintendo has done in my opinion, a very bang up job of bringing games, not only second party exclusives, quote unquote, but also their first party has been really impressive in terms of quality and, of course, quantity as well. So that also adds to the overall collectability factor. And I realize they did it with the 3DS as well. But my argument is going to be that even for the past generations, for quite some time, their attention has been divided. So they have had a handheld to cope with, and they've had a traditional home console to cope with. This time, they've focused their efforts entirely on one system, and I think that has helped them in terms of achieving, an amazing library of games.
What was the question I asked before? It was like,
Well, we were
okay, it was
talking about,
monetary like access, and then
yeah.
but your clapback is like, okay, well, if you want to play the great game, then yeah, you need to spend that much. Couldn't I make the same argument for any retro console? Yeah, if I want to play Baten Kaitos Origins, I should drop $100 because it's novel and unique. And I don't know, because like I would maybe clap back to the Mario Odyssey example and say, yeah, I mean it's a good game, but uh, even if you look on the competitor consoles of the current generation, if you want those first party awesome exclusives, yeah, PS4, 5, like Uncharted, like that's, they have whole collections where you can play them and like they gift them away with the PS4 console, and I think there's this artificial sense of worth when it comes to Nintendo games that over exaggerates prices that people accept and continue to play into and then support and buy. I mean, hell, I do to some extent too. Like I bought a decent number of Switch games. I've played and bought Mario Odyssey. I bought Breath of the Wild. I waited a little bit till I could get them cheaper. But I do think that that access argument, like you'll be seeing PS4 games for $5 in the when you go to GameStop now. And PS3 games are still really easily collectible. I don't see a time where Switch games will ever be, especially physical, easily collectible.
Yeah, I mean, that could very well be the fact, and that would be um, basically my argument would fall flat if that were the case. But and this is why I'm saying it is subjective. But once again, when you talk about the PlayStation, any PlayStation, I'm a huge PlayStation fan. So I mean, yeah, I love the Xbox, I love the PlayStation, but the bottom line is when it comes to the pecking order of quote unquote desirability, Nintendo really is above at least those two, if not even Sega and things of that nature. I just don't speak about Sega because it's not my area of expertise.
Right.
However, when it comes to PlayStation and Xbox, I'm not gonna say that those systems aren't collectible. They are, of course, they are. But people tend to, like you mentioned, the artificial valuation, whatever it is. If it's people are paying for it, it's not really artificial, but it's something that just exists in the market that
Yeah,
we speak of
market
today.
market value.
Yeah.
I guess my issue was that like the argument was that like the Saturn won't be, it's not collectible because you can't get it, right? Or it's like it's inaccessible. Well, in some extent, just the existence of the barrier, artificial or not, does make access to those Switch games even harder. And then the fact that the library is so big and so like there are so many games that like I guess people talk about, it makes it like it's almost like you're in an ocean and you're just trying to find like the gems. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That is kind of my argument towards it. So, for example, the Wii U, not a whole lot of the ocean is a pond. It's not really an ocean. The Wii does have an ocean, but the problem with the Wii is there's a lot of quote unquote shovelware. I mean,
Sure, yeah.
maybe some of yeah, so there's that, people are like, do I really want to pay $60-$70 for shovelware? No.
No.
So that's another thing that the Switch has for the most part, obviously not every single thing. But if you go into that ocean, chances are you're going to catch a real nice fish. As in, there are not a lot of bad games for the Switch,
Yeah,
comparatively speaking.
I could understand that. I think the irony of this is that I originally was like, going into this conversation like maybe like oh, people in the past, I'm not saying you've done this, but like people during the Wii U era used to be like, "Oh, the Wii U is going to be really hard to get games for. You got to get them now," like but the irony that I'm seeing in this conversation is that maybe the Wii U is actually more collectible than the Switch right now. Even though the pond may have less games that are like successes, it's a smaller pond. You have more access to them. They're cheaper because of the existence of Switch games. I'm almost team Wii U right now.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the Wii U is a very interesting, very interesting, I guess, case study of its own because the library is really small. Plus, a lot of the games got ported over to the Switch, so there's that. I mean, yes, it's very collectible, and once again, there's that. Hey, what's everybody else doing on YouTube? I want to do the same thing. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
that going on as well.
Yeah.
But
Wait. There's a lot of that going on with what?
okay,
The Switch or the Wii U?
the Wii U. I'm talking about the Wii U at the moment.
I
At the
would say
moment,
the
yeah, the
same
Switch has
thing
it
is
too.
happening with the Switch, personally. Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
That was one of the arguments that I made. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So there is definitely quote unquote influence based on what other people are going after getting, and I just think that in time, maybe I'm wrong. And also another factor that I think I mentioned in the
Wait.
previous
Before
video.
you get to the next thing, I want to address that one. So you
Okay.
said that the influence may factor into it. To me, the influence actually factors negatively. If you look at collectability, it almost leads to the sense of, well, everybody's talking about it. So is this thing that, really of that much interest. I guess you can argue either way, right? This is subjective. You could say like, okay, well, because it's influential and people are talking about it, like you want to be on the bandwagon. Great, I understand that. I just think that it almost takes away from some of the actual like intrinsic appeal that you might get and leads to more of a superficial appeal.
Yeah, that is true. I won't deny that. However, I will say that also when somebody is talking about it and they are getting quote unquote views and likes and sort of feedback and hey, we're doing this topic right based on that video that was made. So there is interest,
Mm-hmm.
whether the interest is positive or whether the interest is, hey, you know what, you're wrong, or I have a different opinion, or I don't feel this way. The point is still there is that interaction between whatever the YouTubers are talking, whenever they're talking about the Switch, and whether you agree with it or disagree with it, or have a different opinion about it, you're still interacting with that point of view. You're still interacting with that video, that whatever the case, whatever they're talking about at the moment, and that maybe what's the word I'm looking for? Not directly, but indirectly influences you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the conversation aspect. I do worry about sometimes people follow the herd. So when you have like a larger YouTuber who's like the Switch centric channel, it is like it's a hype train, I guess you would call it. Like everybody's all aboard. And then if you're not on board, it's almost like I don't know. It's almost like it's a community that you're not welcome in. So like I see some I don't know, just from my observations, if I don't agree with opinions when it comes to like, the Switch hype or like, even from the console aspect or from like certain game aspects, I guess it's like a perpetual honeymoon phase since the Switch has released. And I feel, uh, one, that that's superficial, and two, that the longer that goes on, the more likely it's going to lead to the next thing, the hype with the next thing.
Yeah, and that's where we were getting to next, because the hype with the next thing. I'm not sure how many more next things will happen in terms of collectability,
Yeah.
as in how many more cycles do we have before we're done with physicals altogether.
Wow.
So that's also one of the reasons why I think that the Switch and its successor, by the way, which I hope will be backwards compatible with the Switch, are going to be two systems that sort of go hand in hand with collectability. But after that, I'm really not sure if the next, the following Nintendo console, not the next one, but the following one, will it be physical at all? Will it be completely digital? My guess, probably digital, the way things are going. And then if that occurs, then all of a sudden the last quote unquote physical thing that Nintendo published becomes very, oh wow, just that it basically never dies off. I
Right.
guess what I'm
Okay.
saying. Wait, yeah,
So I want to pause you there because I think we're segueing in something I wanted to talk about as well. I want to come back to this, hypothesizing about successor consoles later. Um, but what you talked about is like this could be the last physical, console with physical games for Nintendo or modern games, which kind of leads me to an aspect that I think is important here, which is history, like the history of the console, its historical value. So how do you quantify historical value when it comes to consoles, or do you,
um,
or evaluate it? If quantify is like throwing you off, like how do you
yeah, yeah,
qualitatively assess the historical value of a console?
yeah. I'm not 100% sure on because if I'm being completely honest, I don't really do it. I mean,
Yeah.
well, the obviously the library of the games is the number one qualitative analysis of any console, right? If the games are good, that's one way of looking at it, but
Mm.
it's a little bit more than that. I mean, I guess it is a little bit of influence, a little bit of influence, because a lot of people are talking about a certain game. Let's say if they're talking about, I don't know, Shin Megami Tensei 5, which both me and you enjoyed. We talked about it. We have you know built a argument that that game is awesome, and now all of a sudden I will view the Switch as a quality system to collect for because of Shin Megami Tensei 5. It's one of the exclusives on there. That's just one, sort of example out there. If we both enjoy Star Fox 64, which I know you do and I do as well, then that brings up the Nintendo 64 sort of. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but that's kind of a way that I measure quality of a system based on my experiences and of course experiences of the friends and community that I follow.
So let me clarify. It's how you assess the historical value. It's place in history. It's like how people were talking about it at the time, like the games and like, the libraries and like that's what makes it historical to you or historically important or not important. Is that correct?
Yes, I will say. I mean, that's obviously one factor. Yes, I will say that is
Sure.
correct.
Two factors because the one is the whole library and the other is like what people are talking about at the times. I would agree, with both of these. I think that they are significant. I think that obviously, if we're talking about a game console, like if we're talking about the goddamn what's the one you put over your head? It's not VR. It's like not Oculus. What is it?
Not the VR, not Oculus. Which one are we
The
talking
one with
about?
the Wario's Woods, the one
Oh,
that's in
the
red.
Virtual Boy.
Oh yeah, the Virtual
Virtual Boy.
Boy. Yeah, it's like, well, there's 7 games for it, and I think I can live without playing them. Like so, like
Yeah.
I don't think that honestly that system is too historically important. I do think that like its place, like what it led to later, does give it some value. Now I can make that argument for a lot of consoles that have segued the generations. The Nintendo 64 and PS1 were pivotal because they were the first times that 3D gaming was being explored. I guess Saturn, as well. And you could say that there were examples on the Super Nintendo and on the Mega Drive and probably on TurboGrafx. I'm not as familiar with that library. BioPhoenix and Terry help me out. But when it comes to like the 64 and PS1, those were the 3D consoles, and there's a reason that like Mario 64 or Zelda 64, or even the racing games, the Mario Kart, the F Zeros, whatever, and you could say the same for PS1 RPGs, the Final Fantasy sevens, eights, nines, Chrono Cross, they were all so significant at the time. And so like my assessment of historical value comes down to how have these games changed the game? What have they done for consoles and for gaming? And I think going back to the Wii U, it's kind of interesting because the Wii U is historically significant when you look at it in terms of like its lead up into like the success that was the Switch. It's almost like a not a tech demo, but it's like when you get like people like those demo discs for the PS1,
Mhm.
it's almost like a demo disc, and it's one of those super rare collectible cool historical things. When I look at the Switch, I don't see it as like the cool historical thing. I mean, you could say that it's made history in terms of record breaking numbers. You could say the same thing for the PS2, but I almost see there's a reason that PS1 games are more collectible than PS2 games. Like they're really harder to find. They're treasures, they're values in your collection. Switch games, it's almost like their values because of the value that the market set.
Well, I mean, right now, yes, that is the case. But maybe years down the road, that opinion will change, and we haven't realized what the Switch's historical uh, factor appreciation will be. Maybe, I mean, this is the first console really to truly make hybrid and
True.
totally be called a hybrid console. So there's that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So there's factors that we're probably going to look back upon years from now and say, wow, this console really did revolutionize X, Y, and Z.
Mm,
Now, I also say that for example, the to a much lesser extent, the controllers. A lot of people pay attention to the controllers. The Wavebird is the famous one. The N64, for various reasons, is either liked or disliked, whatever the case is. But when it comes to the Switch controllers, I think they're very underappreciated right now. But I think when everything is said and done, we're going to look back upon them like the Switch Pro controller, even the Joy Cons. I know there's Joy-Con drift and this and that, but they're going to be like, okay, wow, they really did bring something different to the table.
okay, yeah. I do want to talk about hardware. I do want to make an example though. Do you know the top five game? What some of the top five Game Boy Advance games are?
No, I am a Game Boy novice. I have no idea.
4 out of 5 of them come from one series. Do you know what that series is?
Mario,
Pokemon. It's
Pokemon.
like
Okay,
all Pokemon Gen 3 or the Gen 1 remakes. Have you ever looked into how expensive those games are? An original copy.
probably very expensive.
Yes, but they were million sellers. They've sold like tons. Like I think combined it was like 30 million units out of just the top 4. But like there's also a lot of like cheap knockoffs that like, you can get cheaper, but they're not the real thing. Like they don't fit right into the Game Boy Advance. I'm going to look it up real quick. Pokemon GBA original authentic. That's the top search result
Okay,
on eBay. $90 Ruby version, and that's just for the cartridge, and so like it supports both of our arguments because it supports your idea that like, okay, people want to play this and it's got this appeal, and okay, you're going to pay the value of whatever it's worth at the time. I think it like, but it also invalidates your argument in the sense that like it's not accessible to play it. So
that's
like,
what I was saying.
it's nuanced.
Yeah. So here's the thing about the Game Boy Advance and a lot of its predecessors. A lot of the argument, or not the argument, a lot of the you will see you just looked up the prices and everything,
Yeah.
and it was not complete in box,
Right.
and that's for collectors that is like oh man, it's not complete in box. So when you're talking about Super Nintendo, the NES, these earlier cardboard boxes that we used to get way back in the day, those things today are, they don't exist, or if they do exist, you are paying a premium for them. So once again, I'm saying that if there is a collector out there that wants something complete in box or whatever, I know we're kind of jumping to a
Tangents a
different,
little bit.
yeah, a little bit of a tangent, but I'm saying it's going to be a lot more of a struggle for them to do so. They can do it if they have the money to do so, but my point is the general public is, or the general uh, you know, group of people are probably going to prefer something that is a little bit more, or a little bit less pricier, has a little bit less pricey of a point of entry, but
Yeah.
at the top end can be something that is super. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I have this in my collection.
True.
So I think as term in terms of preservability, the way the Nintendo carts come in these nice sturdy cases, I just think that that strengthens my argument. Maybe for me, but
Wait, wait,
I
wait.
don't know.
Okay, so when GameStop used to take DS games, they used to gut the plastic around it and they'd sell only the cartridges. I don't see what's stopping them from doing that from Switch games 5 years from now. But going back to the GBA thing, you said that we can't predict like if Switch games will be more easier to accumulate or not. And I guess the point is that even though, GBA games, there are millions of them out there, they should be cheap, easy to play and collect, are not, and I think that we've had enough time elapsed since the start of the Switch to see that like the value of these games has not gone down. Technically, I mean the value of the American dollar has gone down, but so like you could say it's easier to get now, but I think that seeing that is a predictor of like just how expensive the Nintendo tax is going to be for Switch games.
Yeah, very valid point. Very valid point. And not to mention, if I'm kind of sort of countering my own argument in a way, but not to mention, back in the Game Boy Advance days, the number of gamers and or collectors, especially, wasn't as high as it is today. So
Yeah.
there's that factor as well. As more and more collectors grow, more and more interest grows, and when that grows, the supply is gonna drop. So there are those factors, absolutely. And well, and that's the beauty of it. It's all subjective. This argument could come. or the argument that I made could come, fall flat on its face, and I'd say, okay, yeah, I was wrong, but that will be years from now.
Well, it's somewhat subjective, but it's mainly speculative. And you can speculate based on, data as well. So I mean, in some degrees, yes, it's going to be your subjective opinion, it'll be my subjective opinion, but we are basing these on facts. So, I do want to
That's
clarify that
true. I
too.
mean, I would like to. I mean, I probably should do a little bit more data analysis before I make a topic like this. But I will admit that I did not. It was
Yeah.
more of a gut feeling. But yes, maybe if the topic was a little bit better researched, I think maybe I would have found the same thing, or maybe I would have changed my opinion.
Maybe. I don't think you need to like do extensive research for this video necessarily. I think there are common truths that we accept. Like the Switch is like has the most like of the physical library right now between that PS4 and Xbox One. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree that the unit is like a top seller or that it's desirable. You have the study from Japan where 19 out of 20 of the top 20 games for the year were Switch games. So like I don't think you need to necessarily come into this with like everything to a T. But I guess my point is just that like we are having a conversation based off of truths. So,
Absolutely.
which is good. That's a good thing. Let's talk hardware. So, what is the longevity or collectability of Switch hardware in your opinion?
Very collectible, in my opinion, simply because
In your objective
Nin-
opinion. Sorry.
objective opinion. I'm not going to go there. I will say subjective. I'll play it safe.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think that once again the collectability all comes down to the Nintendo brand, and the more collectible items, like i.e. special editions, special controllers, collectible box. Oh, well, we're not going to talk about software, but I'm saying collectible controllers, etc. That they put out, different colored Joy Cons. They all become very collectible down the road.
So are there any consoles that from a hardware perspective you think are more collectible?
Yeah, the hardware is a little bit more challenging to sort of argue against. I will say
Okay.
maybe the N64. I'm not 100% sure on the GameCube, but there people could make an argument about the GameCube as well.
Different
But
color
I will
palettes,
not.
yeah.
I will not go the. I will still not go the PlayStation. The Xbox 360 does make a decent argument. They had a lot of collectible consoles, but I will still say that Nintendo kind of edges them out just because of popularity of their brand.
Sure.
So let's just say, oh, I'm sorry, also the 3DS has
Yes.
an amazing selection of great hardware that is really unique. So
Yes.
there are those as well.
When we're talking hardware, we're talking two things. In this case, we're talking aesthetic, like what visual appeals are there for the different types of units. And I think 3DS, like I could easily, if I wanted, amass like a 3DS collection hardware wise between all of the various types of units that people hate, the new, the old, the 2D, the 3D, but the point is like that each one is unique in its own right. And then they have special editions, Fire Emblem, Zelda, Monster Hunter, and so you could name off all of the cool 3DSs. Switch, it's really just Joy-Cons when I'm looking at it. At the back of the Switch looks a little bit different, but it still has the same kind of overall look. I guess you could say Switch Lite, and you could say the OLED,
Yeah,
bigger
there
battery
are some.
life.
Yeah, there are some variants. They have the Animal Crossing, the Mario one. There are some variants, but not nearly as many as some of the Pokemon Switches are out there, but not nearly as many as the 3DS. Yeah, the 3DS was really unique, and they really uh, what I would call a collector's nightmare if you tried to go after a 3DS hardware collection.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be a nightmare.
That'd be cool though, because they're all portable. So I mean, you could really just enjoy them however you want. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not gonna fork over that much money.
Yeah.
In terms of durability, how durable do you think the Switch unit is?
I'm using the one that I purchased 5+ years ago. So as far as durability is for me, very, very high. Now, my Joy Cons do drift, but there's a fix out there, so I kind of cheated a little bit. However, there is uh, I never feel like I am taxing the system in any way when I'm playing, and I play my Switch regularly. I just, I've been playing the heck out of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and it's getting a lot of runtime.
Yeah.
So I don't think that durability is an issue with the Nintendo Switch.
Okay. I do think that durability has decreased over console generations. I mean, my N64 is my original N64. It works fine. I had to do a little cleaning of it, but it works fine. And it was so minuscule. I'm not like a tech guy, you know. I bought a Genesis that's like 30 years old. Alex sent me an Atari. They all work perfectly. I've had more recent consoles break down. I've heard horror stories. So like my GameCube, when I bought my GameCube, just stopped working. I've heard of like the Wii that like Wii U that melted down a house or something. I know Wii U tablets are a pain in the ass, and if you break the tablet, you're screwed. Well, Switch has a little bit of an edge there in the sense that like, okay, well, if the controllers break, you could just replace them. You could replace Joy Cons. Um, I guess the Switch Lite counters that argument because you would need to get the whole unit repaired, which is not as much with the DS era. I guess well actually you would have to get the DS thing repaired too. I had a thumbstick that broke on my old uh,
Mm.
3DS XL but I wore it out, like, so I mean that was my fault. But again, it wasn't durable. It didn't really last. How do you think durability plays into collectability?
So before I answer that question, keep that question in mind because
Sure,
I'm going to make a point
I'll write it.
because you may or may not have picked up the exact consoles and examples that you listed when you talked about durability. Do you know what was one of the factors that you inadvertently talked about when you talked about durability for all consoles? Can you guess? I'll answer it
Well,
because you
maybe
probably
yeah,
don't know
you
it.
go for it. That's fine.
Cartridge based.
Right.
They're all cartridge based consoles that you say are durable.
True.
Now, when it comes to moving parts within a console, when it comes to disc reading, optics, all that stuff, they're going to break down.
Okay.
The life cycle of those parts is destined to fail. Destined to fail. And I think anytime you have a cartridge based system, it's just going to be more durable than some of the quote unquote CD based systems out there.
Okay.
I'm just generally throwing that out there, not necessarily that's the land of the law. And of course, when you talk about controllers and stuff like that, they wear out regardless. But,
Yeah.
so there's that factor. Now, as far as
Wait,
the
wait. Before you
question,
answer that question, so
okay,
I want to respond to that.
okay.
So that's a good point. Cartridge. I've always been a firm believer in cartridges. And their cartridges are collectible in and of themselves. I think if like, I don't know how collectible a Switch cartridge is. Like, do I really care what the little thing looks like? No. But an N64 cart, that is your artwork. Like, nobody goes for the N64 boxes that I know of. I mean, unless you can, but like, it's really like a big ask to get the whole N64 in box, whatever. So, I think what complicates it with the Switch, and then also the 3DS. The 3DS is like the thumbstick is built into the unit, and so you break the thing, you screwed yourself. The Wii U, you break the tablet, you screwed you screwed the whole thing, you screwed the console. Switch, Joy Cons, okay, they come off, etc. But the $80 to replace, will more Joy Cons be available that are still working when a lot of them already have Joy Con drift? I don't want to go into like the whole conspiracy route. I don't care to do that, but like, there is the sense of like, okay, a lot of them have had Joy Con drift, and then you have to send that to Nintendo to get fixed. Switch lights are come with the thing built in, so you would have to get the you would have to just hope that the freaking joystick doesn't have drift. Um, I've had issues playing it handheld where the Joy Cons just accidentally slip off of my unit because of like to slide it in. There's like it clicks sometimes. Like if I accidentally click the thing, it slips out. Um, I do think about like, can this thing wear out over time? What is the longevity of a tablet? It's only been 6 years, 16, 17, 17, 18, 19, 21, 2.
5+ years. Yep.
Yeah. So, I think we have to speculate a little bit. Like, we can't base everything off of like truths unless there were a lot of stories of like units malfunctioning and things breaking, etc. And then the other issue is like just like with the Wii U, if you like screw up the tablet, you can screw up the Switch tablet, and that's your unit unless you're putting it in dock mode. So I don't
And
know.
that's what I was going to say. Yes. So the in essence, and I know this is not the ideal situation, but the Switch has a two fail-proof, if you will, ways of playing the game. So if the handheld version, you're struggling with it, or you can't play it for whatever reason, you can still dock the Switch, and you can still get a third-party controller and enjoy to some extent. I mean, you can still get original PlayStation, N64. Super and Nintendo controllers, third-party controllers on the market readily available. So I am pretty certain that that's going to be the case with the Switch. Now a handheld, yeah, the longevity may be an issue, but if you can play one or the other, not ideal. I understand, but at least you can play it. So
Mm,
there's that.
true. Uh, I guess though, if handheld is a question mark, and then like on the TV was like going to be the primary thing, wouldn't like PS4 or Xbox be preferable? To play and experience those games,
Um,
or PC?
I still, yeah, I still think no, because if you were talking about, let's go back to that disk drive, the
Sure, yeah,
optical
yeah.
disk
It's
drive.
just a
Yeah,
question,
so
by the way. So go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So I will say that,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in terms of durability, I will say that those disk drives are bound to fail. A lot of these newer consoles, I don't really trust the heat sinks that they put in them. They are producing a ton of heat,
Okay.
and I just think that it's just a matter of time before they're gonna fall apart. Now you can say the same for the Switch as well. I,
Okay.
I guess so that argument sort of falls flat, but there are a lot of fast moving parts within those consoles that probably cut back on the longevity or the
Longevity.
durability of the hardware.
If all modern consoles are doomed for overheating, then shouldn't an older console be more collectible?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could make that argument. I mean,
Okay.
like I said, like I said, yes, absolutely. An older console can be more collectible. However, if older consoles are not that readily available, then maybe they're not. I don't know.
Okay.
There's like a double, yeah, yes. There are lots of things. This is the beauty of it. It's subjective.
Sure.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
can make an argument. You can make an argument one way or the other. And I could not say no, you're wrong,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're not.
Okay.
Like I even when Terry presented his counter argument on my YouTube video, I said, yeah, you're right. I mean, I can't argue against it. He was talking about the collectivity of the Xbox 360 and how there are so many Xbox 360 exclusives that are very, very collectible. And I said, yeah, they are, but do people really want them? That is the
You have
question.
my permission to argue against it. I'm allowing you this space to do so. I want to talk about the games for a second. I didn't like write down notes about what you said, but I remember you saying like, oh, one, it's the last physical console, and then also another comment about like it's the RPG horror shoot 'em up trifecta.
Hours, yes.
Hours, yeah. I guess my counter argument to that is that it seems like almost all of these games are available on another platform as well. So like that idea of like I need to collect the Switch to play this almost is erased. Versus I think with older consoles and older games, they are very much tied to their hardware. How do you feel about that?
That's true. I mean, I will not disagree with that. I will say, however, that for whatever reason, Nintendo branded consoles, even though they may be inferior in terms of what version you're playing, a lot of them don't have achievements or trophies associated with. Well, none of them do. You are still are not you, but people are still just attracted towards them, and I can't explain the appeal, but I can definitely see a pattern where people are going to pick up the Switch version of a game unless I've noticed unless the game runs extremely poorly. than say it's a much more powerful PlayStation or Xbox console, then they will say, okay, we'll play it on something else.
Sure.
But if that's not a factor, I usually see people going after the Switch version, whatever the reason is. Maybe they want to, collect for one console and have, basically, I love Mario, I love Zelda, and if I can play this shmup, and if I can play this horror game, and if I can play this RPG on the Switch as well, I want to play it there.
Yeah, for sure. I get it. I mean, like I finished The Witcher 3, which we mapped out on the button mappers on Switch. So like I understand like there's that Switch appeal. I think recently I've had my appeal to the Switch has kind of gone down. I've tried to focus more on the home consoles, and I like that PS4 gives you things like the party chat and then the share play feature. Which what is the longevity of those? I don't know. Like so like I don't know. I'm not here to necessarily defend or like be the PS4 spokesperson or Xbox or PC. We'll leave Terry for that. But I mean, I guess I'm just kind of like it does seem like the collectability appeal of Switch is in like public discourse. It really appears that everyone's on board Switch, go Switch. And I think I don't know if I like a lot of the modern Nintendo decisions. And so I'm like very critical of like I don't know, get like even getting on board a lot of that hype, or even like if it's something like picking versions, like saying like I'm gonna get the Switch version. Of course, you get what's right for you, but is that justification to overcharge and put in a Nintendo tax on a title? To me, it's kind of like the shadiness of the Nintendo side that makes it less collectible, less cool, less interesting, kind of more of the more capitalist commercial side of Nintendo, like the ugly kind of like penny pinching side that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, of course, there's that factor as well. I mean, to be honest though, a lot of the Nintendo tax sort of has died off, maybe a little bit. But you are correct. I mean, that does exist. They obviously justify it by saying that well, the cart costs a lot more. Um, but then there's the convenience factor. Of course, there's the portability, which I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Hey, what can you play PlayStation portably? I'm sure you can somehow. But if but the point is you can't. So
PS1.
yeah, even with the Xbox, I mean Steam Deck, yeah, you can. Okay, the Steam Deck is its own animal. So really, there's some
That's
quote
part
unquote.
two. We'll be back in part two for Steam Deck with Bruno.
Yeah, yeah. So there is that Nintendo tax, but are you paying that tax for convenience? Are you paying that tax so that you can enjoy this game while you're commuting back and forth to work? There are lots of factors. Are you
Yeah.
paying because you think that the card is going to last longer than the CD, which I know is a poor argument to make in this day and age, but I'm still the point is. Uh, yes, that is true, but maybe there's some ways people can justify spending that extra $5 to $10 on a game.
I get it. It's a confluence of factors. It's not just one thing. Makes sense to me. Okay. We got about 5 minutes left before we're getting on the button mappers. So
Yay! Who's on there?
yeah,
Anybody that I know of?
this guy, I think he used to go by this name where he mashed things up, letters, like a V and a
Oh, that
G.
guy. You guys are done for.
You'll be with us. Uh, let's talk about what is the Switch successor console? Is there one? When? Who? What? Why? Why PXN?
Yes, there is one. There's because Nintendo, even though they make some boneheaded decisions, they still are a video game company, and there's no way that I can see of that they unless they they'll go the Konami route and they find like magic in those pachinko machines or something, which I don't think will happen. Yes, the successor will happen, and I'm predicting successor will happen early 2024. So 2023 around September, or actually around this time next year, August September, we're gonna hear rumblings of a new Nintendo system. Now, whether it's going to be a true sequel or just an upgraded version of the Switch, I don't know, but it's going to happen, I think, around spring of 2024.
Okay. Do you think Breath of the Wild 2 will release with it?
Yes, it will be a simultaneous release on both the old and new console, kind of like the Wii U one was with Breath of the Wild.
How about Metroid Prime 4?
That one, I think, is going to come a little bit later down the road. I don't think it will be ready next year. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it will be probably either the same year as the new Switch or 1 year after.
How about Star Fox 0.5?
Man, I wish that were a reality. You know what? I'm gonna say we're gonna hear something close to or something related to Star Fox next year. I just have that feeling that Nintendo is gonna come back and give fans what they want, i.e., me and you
And Terry. I don't think he'll
and
like
Terry.
it though. Yeah. Okay. Wow. We disagreed, but we did so with respect and civility. PXN, good on you, man.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Gloves are off.
High five. Good fight. Love it.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen at home, be sure to check him out. PXN Gaming. Great videos. Love his content, and we'll be sporting him on the button mappers as well.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it, and hope to talk and have some more discussions.
All right. Sounds good.